Africa World Hour with Tsepiso Makwetla. Stay tuned for insights, impact, and inspiration right here on Channel Africa. Available on the Channel Africa app.
2100 hours on this Thursday, the 18th of December. Marching into the sun with a beautiful song. It's a humdinger, if I'm going to use people my age's terms. It's a blockbuster of a song. It is called Saga by Iza. He's had an amazing year with regards to that song. He says he never expected it to be as big as it is. It's taken him internationally. He's performed so well. So it's a roundup of some of what we're going to be looking at on Africa World Hour. So tomorrow's a Friday. We'll be doing some of that, looking at the music scene. But firstly, a warm welcome to today. And today, International Migrants Day. So we'll be speaking to the International Organization for Migration on their calls for more robust migration systems. And almost 2 weeks later, 11 Nigerian soldiers who were detained after making an unauthorized entry into Burkina Faso have been released. So all that and more coming up. And we'll also be speaking to Africa's own Dr. Tebe Ikalafeng, who has launched a new book. It's titled Rooted and Rising, Reclaiming Culture and Redefining Our Global Influence. That's at 2140. Welcome to it. This is Africa World Hour.
Tsepiso Makwetla winds it down on Africa World Hour, 9 to 10 p.m.
And we start with our top stories. This hour, Dr. Kingsley Makwetla, former ambassador and director of Risk Recon, says, according to international law, sovereign state has every right to its natural resources. Dr. Makwetla made these comments in response to U.S. President Donald Trump's ordering a blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers entering or leaving Venezuela, a move President Nicolas Maduro has said is the United States' attempt to seize the country's natural resources.
So you've seen this argument by President Trump that they want what belongs to them. They were compensated for the nationalization. But international law, is straightforward, that it is clear that the sovereign state has the sovereign right over its mineral resources. So there's no other state that has any sovereign control over that. And that's called the principle of permanent sovereignty and of national resources. That's where the issue is. But the big problem then is that, Venezuela has one of the largest oil reserves around the world. It is estimated so far now that they have about 303 billion barrels of oil reserves, larger than what Saudi Arabia is having. So that's where the big problem then began, and the United States in need of more oil.
And traffic volumes increasing on the N1's South African main road to the Beitbridge border post between the country and Zimbabwe. This as holiday makers and travellers head to neighbouring countries for the festive season. SABC News reporter Rutendo Bobodi reports from the Beitbridge border post.
That time of the year where you quite naturally will see traffic volumes rising every day. It's been rising from, over the last few days. We've been seeing them, witnessing traffic volumes, going up. Earlier we were at the border, and it's a true reflection of what is going on or what is transpiring on the road. Thousands of people, especially holiday makers and travelers, are trying to cross over to Zimbabwe. We see long queues of travelers and holiday makers having their documents processed. We understand this year 18,000 people are crossing over to neighboring countries. This is about 5,000 more compared to last year, where a maximum of 13,000 people were crossing.
So, as South Africa seeks to diversify trade with a number of countries around the world, Pakistan's High Commissioner in South Africa, Malik Mohammed Farouk, says Islamabad will always want to boost economic ties with Pretoria.
The two countries enjoy very strong, close and cordial relations, which are based on trust, mutual respect and cooperation. All we need is just to take this or translate this into real terms, that what is good for the two nations. Over bilateral trade currently is touching around $500 million. But when you look at the size, potential or the diversity of the two economies is far below the potential. And from our government, the government of Pakistan, they introduced Engage Africa policy. And out of this Africa policy, South Africa enjoys the pivotal role or the center of that policy. So we know that South Africa itself is a huge country with a lot of potential, and it also serves as a gateway to the other African countries in the southern side.
Warner Bros. Discovery has told its shareholders to reject Paramount Skydance's $108.4 billion takeover bid. However, Paramount says its offer is superior to a $72 billion deal that Warner Bros. Stuck with Netflix for its film and streaming businesses. The media giant put itself up for sale after receiving multiple expressions of interest from potential buyers, including approaches from Paramount Skydance. This report by the BBC's News' Michelle Fleury.
This has been a very dramatic sort of plot twist we've been watching here, right? Which is there was a couple of big names all bidding to take over this venerable kind of Hollywood studio, this storied studio, and Netflix was the successful offer. But then, of course, Paramount came kind of galloping over the horizon with this hostile bid trying to sort of essentially disrupt Netflix's offer. Warner Brothers had until essentially the end of the week to kind of respond, and now we know exactly what they think, and they didn't mince their words. I mean, they said they thought the offer was inferior, they suggested it was risky, they also said it was less financially sound. And earlier, in fact, I was speaking to the global editor, business editor of The Hollywood Reporter, George Zelai, who made it clear what he thought about this blunt assessment.
It was a little surprising how direct some of the criticism voiced by the board was in terms of the financing structure. What I expect to happen now, Paramount has previously said this is not our best and final offer. I expect them to come back with a higher offer and maybe finagle a little bit the way some of the funding regiment works and is set up. It's partly a thing of, does maybe the father of David Ellison, the CEO of Paramount, directly support financially this deal, and that would be a big benefit for Paramount.
A Scottish couple whose teenage son took his own life after being blackmailed on Instagram are suing the platform's owner, Meta. It was thought to be the first UK case of its kind. Murray Dowie was 16 when he died in his home in Dunblane in December 2023 after he was targeted by scammers posing as a young girl. His parents have now launched legal action against Meta in a US court seeking punitive damages, claiming that Instagram was not safe. The report by the BBC's News.
Just 16 and a victim of sextortion, Murray Dowie.
He was just a really popular, lovely boy.
On Instagram, he was tricked by criminals in Nigeria, sent intimate pictures. They demanded money, threatened to share the images. In despair, Murray ended his life. His mother, Roz, wants justice. Now she's suing Meta, Instagram's owner.
The worst thing that could possibly happen to us has happened. There's nothing that Meta can do that is worse than what's happened. So we're up for the fight. We'll take it as far as we can.
Too many tears. She's not alone in her campaign to rein in Silicon Valley. This year, Roz and other bereaved British parents travelled to New York, protesting outside Meta's offices, demanding to know why the company didn't protect their children. Enough is enough.
And those are the news headlines in Africa, Will Dower. It is 9 minutes past 9.
Be inspired. Stay informed. Channel Africa, the beauty of life. Now available anytime, anywhere with our new app.
And we continue with a deep look into some of our top stories this hour. Burkina Faso has released 11 Nigerian soldiers who were detained after making an unauthorized entry into the Burkinabo territory. This comes after Nigeria sent an envoy to apologize for violating the country's airspace. The Nigerian Air Force C-130 transport aircraft was forced to make an emergency landing in the Burkinabo city of Bobo de Losa on 8 December 2025 due to a technical problem, but did did so without prior clearance from Burkina Faso's authorities. The unauthorized landing sparked a diplomatic row with neighbors Mali and Niger, as well as the alliance characterizing itself as an unfriendly act. For more on this, we are joined by Austin Aigbe, Advocacy Officer at the West Africa Democracy Solidarity Network. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us, Austin. So just looking at this latest set of developments of events, is it an indication of a thawing of what seemed to be something that raised heckles between the three Sahelian countries and Nigeria?
Yes, it does. It does. There's a bit of suspicion within the Sahel state and a Nigerian aircraft who will suddenly develop technical issues and without approval flying across the airspace. You see, you recall that Niger is part of the Sahel state and Nigeria was supposed to lead a supposed military action after the military took over in that country. And since then, the Sahel states, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, have seen Nigeria as an ally of France. France become the real problem between Nigeria and these good neighbors, as it were. But today, the good neighborhood is over because there is that go-to individual, in this case, France, who used to be the leader of these three countries. Suddenly, it is becoming like an ally of Nigeria, and the Sahel state wouldn't take it very, they took it very seriously, that following the bombardment in Benin, Benin Republic, following the military attempted coup in Benin, suddenly you have an aircraft who has developed technical challenge and is and making a technical stop within their border. That was not a very friendly one.
So worst case scenario, what was the suspicion that of spying, that of nefarious activity that would threaten the sovereignty of the three states?
So, France used to be like everything within these countries. So the suspicion is that it could be that France wants to use the opportunity to get back at to get back at this Sahel state and maybe forcefully take them out or bomb them the way they've done in Benin, because they realize that the relationship between President Talon in Benin and France is very strong. And if you tie that up with Tinubu, President Tinubu of Nigeria, that cordiality is very strong. And that aircraft was a bit of suspicious that could be carried beyond what is not allowed within the Sahel states.
So how would we couch what has happened here? Because as we see Nigeria's foreign minister saying, Yusuf Tuga, saying that the release is as a result of sustained dialogue. So do we see this breakthrough as a result of, as I mentioned, better diplomatic relations, an apology, a compromise? How would you frame what led to this? Because in as much as they're supposedly public, there obviously was some backdoor dealings.
I think it was more of a diplomatic deal. There was no, I wouldn't call it apology. Nigeria did not apologize. The news from the Burkinabe radio station and the television station is the one that has framed the narrative as apology. What had happened, I think it's more of diplomacy. Nigerian authority has moved in with the purpose of trying to secure the 11 Nigerians, Air Force personnel who were on board. I won't call it apology, but the real report, the statement that emanated from the Foreign Affairs Ministry did say it was diplomatic. However, the state television station in Burkina Faso said it was an apology. But whichever one, diplomatic moves, whether backhand or thereabout, could have been classified as apology, because the Nigerian authority at some point actually had said that the 11 arrested Nigerians have been released. That was about 5 days ago. We suddenly realized that it was false information that came from wherever the news came from, maybe to try to douse the tension within the Nigerian state, because it was becoming more of a bit of suspicion within the Nigerian state, within the citizens of Nigeria, that you went into Benin, the flight that went to Bombard in Benin had mistakenly landed in Burkina Faso, which is actually false, because the distance between Benin and Burkina Faso is longer than you can actually have a tackle forth and then you land somewhere in Cote d'Ivoire, or you land somewhere in Ghana, because it's very close to Ghana. But I can't tell because I'm not in the aviation industry, but the thing I believe is that it is possible there was a technical glitch within the aircraft. However, I'm also suspicious that why the glitch leaving Nigeria, we haven't flown less than an hour, and you are headed to Portugal as Portuguese as they said. It looks so funny. That's why I think Tuareg's government did ground the aircraft and said, no, we need to investigate. And I'm sure they investigated and they didn't see anything wanting in that aircraft.
But this is what I also want to understand, because it is ultimately about the balance of power, isn't it? Nigeria as the ECOWAS leader in this position and the AES states. So if it is understood that there was an acknowledgement by Nigeria of supposedly irregularities in overflight authorizations, an apology by any other name could be an apology.
Yes, I would think that there's nothing wrong in saying apology. We apologize that we landed in your airspace. We apologize that we broke your rules. That's international rule. When there's a no-fly zone, you shouldn't fly it. However, I didn't think, because the only information, all the news report that has reported that incident quoted the Burkinabe station, the Burkinabe TV. And with what I know in Burkina Faso, they manipulate every information to try to suit some form of citizen narrative or the government narrative. Our team was in that country at some point where we were told not to record anything, not to use telephones, but suddenly we saw the television station came to the meeting that was supposed to be a covert meeting, a behind-the-scene meeting. But suddenly we saw the news on their TV station apparently saying the direct opposite of the conversation we had in that country. So I think that they use information, talking about manipulation to keep the narrative. But the Nigerian authority, the Nigerian aircraft broke their law, and we need to acknowledge that. And I think that they probably were maybe afraid that Nigeria may want to invade the way they invaded Benin, because it happened almost at the same time. You see, I tell you something. Where I come from in Nigeria, they say when a bird
Austin, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. The quality of the bandwidth, unfortunately, has deteriorated drastically, and I did want to really further the conversation about airspace sovereignty and aviation protocols, particularly within that regional context. As you say, it seems that the Burkinabe want to own the narrative as to how this matter concluded. Interesting discussion to, of course, take a deeper look into. Austin Agbe, thank you so much for speaking to us, advocacy officer at West Africa Democracy Solidarity Network.
Africa. It's time to plug into the heartbeat of the continent. Tune in to Channel Africa, your go-to radio station that broadcasts in 5 different languages.
L'Afrique du Sud célèbre la journée nationale du
Kabla hujaitwa kwa jina la Double K
or more of our forests have been destroyed.
Tamo kutulibwanji ndi
Partido Africano da Independência da Guiné.
See, Channel Africa represents every corner of this amazing land. From Lagos to Cape Town, Nairobi to Dakar, we've got you covered with the freshest news, music, and cultures. So, turn up the volume, feel the rhythm. And Join the conversation. Channel Africa, the African perspective. 1 hour, one continent, one voice. Africa World Hour with Tsepiso Makwetla on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
And 20 minutes past 9, we move on to this story, the world marking International Migrants Day. Today, the International Organization for Migration saying that it's calling for stronger, more robust migration systems that protect people on the move and support the communities that welcome them. Observed each year on the 18th of December, the day recognizes the contributions of migrants worldwide and underscores the importance of protecting their rights and dignity. This year, the day is marked under the theme My Great Story, Cultures and Development, highlighting how human mobility enriches societies, drives economic growth, and strengthens connections across communities. To discuss this further is the IOM regional spokesperson for East, the Horn and Southern Africa, Yvonne Ndege. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us, Yvonne.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity.
So if we were just to say at a high level, what are the major challenges, but also the benefits of international migration? And of course, within the context of recognizing the day that we know many countries are having challenges with regards to that. But as you say, you highlight that there are benefits to this. If we just look at it at a high level in 2025, where are we?
Well, International Migrants Day is a day where the International Organization for Migration, the UN's migration agency, takes the opportunity to remind the world of the positive benefits of migration and the tremendous contributions of migrants around the world, showing the world that migration is an opportunity that symbolizes human progress, that supports and boosts development, that builds and supports communities, that builds bridges and enhances peace. On International Migrants Day, IOM, the International Organization for Migration, really takes the opportunity to call for better migration management and governance, more robust migration systems that protect people, migrants, the internally displaced, systems that support people on the move, and supports the communities that welcome them, ordinary citizens around the world, including in South Africa and Southern Africa. This year, International Migrants Day is marked, as you said in your intro, under the theme of My Great Story, Cultures and Development, where IOM is really trying to focus attention on highlighting how human mobility enriches societies, drives economic growth, and strengthens connections across communities. IOM is asking governments, the donor community, the private sector, you, journalists and the media, civil society, ordinary citizens to work more closely together to manage migration so that migration can deliver the dividends and benefits we all know are possible. But it's also a call for us to respond to the enormous needs of migrants, not just globally, but in South Africa, in Southern Africa, including IDPs, who set out in search of opportunity and safety. And it's a call to create more inclusive systems that protect migrants and those on the move. Now, to your question on the current state of migration, if I can put it that way, in the region, well, migrants across South Africa, Southern Africa, and East Horn and Southern Africa can and do face tremendous challenges. Those challenges include a lack of access to safe and regular migration, meaning many migrants still move irregularly without the correct documentation. Due to this type of irregular movement, they can and often do face exploitation. They can be targeted by people traffickers and smugglers. They can face exploitation in the workplace due to a lack of labor laws, which means they may not have the right documentation or paperwork or work permits or visas to be working in a place. And of course, that opens them up further to exploitation and a lack of legal protection. In the Horn of Africa, it's a particularly acute problem, meaning the Somalia, the Ethiopias and Djiboutis of the Horn of Africa where every year we see hundreds of migrants actually losing their lives trying to cross the Gulf of Aden from countries like Djibouti to reach the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and other Gulf countries in the hope of finding work. But we've also seen this problem from the Horn of Africa down very specifically to South Africa, the southern route, where we see migrants primarily from Ethiopia, sometimes also from Somalia, trying to reach South Africa with the same hopes, the same dreams, looking for work and opportunities, and passing through Kenya, Tanzania, Zambia, Zimbabwe, in the hope of reaching South Africa.
And that's what I want to touch on, the fact that, migration interacts with the broader global forces. So the reasons for migration, as you hinted at, are myriad, but one can't deny the fact that there are tensions as a result of migrations in some of those host countries, and also the political rhetoric that creates fear and suspicion.
Yes, and we have seen this rhetoric that you speak of, and that's why today on International Migrants Day, IOM, the International Organization for Migration, the UN's migration agency, is really taking the opportunity to try to highlight the positive contributions and benefits of migration in South Africa, Southern Africa, and in the Eastern Horn of Africa. Let me just give you one example. Remittances. Most of your audiences will know that migrants send money back home. Remittances continue to expand and are a major, contributor for many countries in East Horn and Southern Africa. Remittances in the region reached something like $18 billion at the end of last year. These financial flows that we see coming from these very same migrants that we're discussing reduce poverty, build resilience, and support investment in education, housing, and small businesses. For multiple countries in the region, remittances actually form a vital share of GDP and are more stable in some cases than the aid and foreign investment that we see. Remittances, for example, in Lesotho, in the Comoros, in South Sudan, and in Somalia, in some instances make up 15 to 22% of GDP. Relevant maybe for your audiences tonight, you being in South Africa, the country remains the primary source of remittance outflows in the entire East Horn and Southern Africa region, reflecting, South Africa's role as a major labor destination for workers from neighboring countries. Significant remittance outflows are also recorded in places like Angola, DRC, Democratic Republic of the Congo, that is, and Zambia, which host sizable labor migrant populations. So it's really important and what IOM is trying to do is to give an accurate picture of the presence of migrants in these countries and just how much migrant populations and migrant labor actually contribute to socioeconomic development.
But the problem also is the internal pressure that a country like South Africa would face as a result of what has been characterized as porous borders, and almost as if South Africa is not intentional in its migratory policy. And we've seen a tightening of the space in, regions such as Europe when it comes to really speeding up on asylum and refugee procedures in order to deny people from entering the country. So I'm just wondering how much of a misunderstanding, not only for the reasons of migration, but also the regulation that countries are employing to deal with it, that it is, as you say, beneficial in some cases, and where there are challenges, that there actually is international law that offers protection both internally and externally.
Well, thank you for the question, and absolutely, you're right. You're 100% right, which is that we have seen a tightening of the space, the migration space, across European countries in recent times. In relation to this region, Southern Africa, South Africa in particular, and the East Horn of Africa region, IOM, the International Organization for Migration, works very closely with member states, with governments in the region, in particular in relation to South Africa, SADC, to develop migration frameworks that enable member state countries and citizens of these member state countries to actually realize the benefits of well-governed migration and positive, beneficial, good and effective migration governance. So, for example, I talked a little bit about remittances. We're also seeing an increase in bilateral labor agreements. Remember, most of the migration that we see in our region is actually internal. It's not migrants trying to leave the continent. It's migrants actually trying to work and be present and live and create livelihoods, oftentimes in the neighboring country. So IOM, the International Organization for Migration, works with governments, primarily through SADC and other regional economic communities, to come up with frameworks where there is the benefits of migration can be fully realized and enjoyed by countries of receiving migrants, countries sending migrants, and countries that have migrants in transit.
Okay.
And what we have seen so far within the examples that I laid out is that in the East Horn and Southern Africa region, what we are seeing is that where there is improved migration governance and alignment between the various countries in the region, that migration is actually proving to be a massive boost to socioeconomic development and development overall.
Thank you so much for your time and insights. Really appreciate it. Yvonne Ndege, who is the International Organization for Migration spokesperson for East Horn and Southern Africa on International Migration Day today. It is now 28 minutes to 10.
As 2025 draws to a close, we pause to honor the spirits that connect us.
Let's get it started.
The festive season reminds us of what truly matters: family, community, and unity. No matter where you gather or reflect, Channel Africa is with you. Bring you stories and voices that are shaped by the African perspective.
Something significant happened on this day. Asanda, you were a baby, I'm sure. I'm not even sure if you were born. No, you were a baby, yeah.
Yoga. Matseko is still trying to convince me and look me
No,
over.
I've done that already, and you're going to come now on the journey.
I will try.
From all of us to all of you, may your season be safe and peaceful. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Tsepiso Makwetla winds it down on Africa World Hour, 9 to 10 p.m.
It is 27 minutes to 10. We continue with Africa World Hour. Now, we put a spotlight on South Africa. We focus on statistics from the country's police service, where an average of 51 people are kidnapped each day, with over 4,500 cases reported in the first quarter of 2025 alone. Ahead of the festive season, Canada, the United States and China issued travel advisories cautioning their citizens about traveling to South Africa. The advisories highlighted the high risk of serious crime, including express kidnappings, where victims are abducted and forced to withdraw money from ATMs and, in some cases, held overnight to make additional withdrawals. For more on this, we're joined on the line by crime expert Professor Jacob Mofokeng. A very good evening to Professor Mofokeng, and thank you so much for speaking to us. So I've just used the term express kidnappings, but are there different types of motives behind kidnappings in South Africa that has seen it being, or certainly we are experiencing a spike, maybe perhaps in reporting, but certainly the impression is in numbers? Is it because it's seen as having immediate or express rewards?
Well, good evening, Tsepiso, and good evening to the listeners. Indeed, we have these two categories of kidnappings, of which the first one you've already indicated, express kidnappings, where it amounts to almost 80% of kidnappings because of, it's easy for individuals to be taken from the street, during hijackings, with the aim to get immediate access to, bank cards. We know that people are having, cell phones that are able to use certain, links to their accounts. And it is easier for them, the kidnappers, to be able to withdraw cash as well as to make certain transfers as well as to make loans, because, some of the clients, they might have, pre-approved. So that is an express. That is why it's amount to 80%. But the one that is for only fewer 5%, it is about kidnapping for ransom. So, and this is just a smaller portion of, the victims that have been targeted. These are the individuals that will be demanded. We had cases of lesser amounts between 500,000 lesser, but we also had cases of 72M 250 million. So, and we need to be able to be aware that it's not only the rich that have been targeted, but also the research has also pointed to a place where, the pattern as modus operandi of individuals, low income, establishments. This could be attributed to copycats, because normally whatever that has been reported in the media, any other person is watching, and then they can also be encouraged whenever there is a reporting that, the lack of capacity, crime intelligence, lack of resources or lack of servicing of vehicles. And as such, it can also, activate that kind of interest. Hence, then we are talking about lesser than 500, thousands. So it is very much important that, especially during this time where we know that it is that time where certain individuals might have, in excess of a lot of cash because of bonuses. So they need to also be careful in terms of whatever that they post in the social media. Hence, then, other people, they have, they've got this tendency that whenever they're happy, they have acquired vehicles, properties, they want the whole world to celebrate with them, only to find that they become victims, whereby now they will be profiled.
And I also want to have a clear understanding of those. Are these opportunistic crimes, or in some cases, do criminals spend a lot of time studying their targets? And I also want to look at, just in terms of the trend, specific locations and transport risks. Do they invest a lot of time, money, and effort into that, including, for instance, tracking foreign travelers? How does one know when they are exposing themselves or are exposed?
Well, Tsepiso, like what you indicated, the Chinese government, they want their citizens, in terms of those that are having businesses, so that they can change the patterns in which they probably, certain cases, if it is winter, it's easier for business people to be attacked, because then the time for closing of business could be on a particular time, but they have to attend to that. Normally, those of high end, they are profiled by syndicates, because you find that you are talking about a large sums of money where individuals need to be taken, as well as their families be threatened. But express kidnappings are cases in a case where, those are opportunistic. Other people can be found to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. And then sometimes, because of a lack of access of amount that they withdraw or maybe they carry, those are becoming, they fall under the category of express kidnappings, because these are the larger amounts of, majority of kidnappings that often take place this category can be activated by any, copycats, but as well as those that could be, been established in this area of kidnappings. But those that are being profiled are people who are probably fall in the category of wealthy individuals. Normally these are the people that probably will be in the headlines of, the establishments, the businesses. But normally we don't even have to learn about such, because mostly the families of these wealthy people will not really report certain cases, because the police or the government will not deny any family if in a case where loved ones are being, kidnapped, and they feel as a family that they have to maybe take this particular case, with their own hands to be able to negotiate. But it is required that no matter what category of, life in which individuals, belong to, then it is always necessary, because, police are trained and there is a specialized unit that will be able to, to deal with whoever, has abducted or, kidnapped the loved ones.
So how are law enforcement officers and systems responding to these trends? Because looking at the crime statistics, it seems to suggest that there's a mixed bag. So of violent crimes, sexual and both murder, there's been some decline, but it's also a mixed picture. So how are police adapting to this? As in, are they doing that? Are they focusing on, economic hubs such as Johannesburg, which is where the international airport is? That would include Cape Town, which we've also seen a number of cases reported. Are the resources being put into these worrying trends?
Well, Tsepiso, I think serious violence crime units could be capacitated to a certain extent, but what is important then is for all of us is that a socially cohesive and safe, country, South Africa, requires a series of overlapping interventions. It's not only about the South African or law enforcement agency, but it's about educated public as well as, other, force enablers to be able to work together, because then, with a high level of crime risks, to safety, security, and democracy, we need those overlapping, measures as well as cohesive, so that we can be able to come with integrated. But in a case where we can only look at the South African Police Service, it will never be, capacitated enough. Why? Because we are working with, organized criminals, cartels that, they will always, as we often say and often hear, that they always step ahead in terms of the interventions. Remember, when kidnappings happen, this individual, especially those that are targeting wealthy individuals, they profile these individuals. And at the time when the police are informed of that particular incident already, then those that are responsible for this, they know the routes as well as the safe houses where they will be able to place such individuals. So it is important that we have something that can work of each, different departments as well as, the public themselves. They need to be able to have the so-called cohesive and, and in strategies, so that we can be able to understand,
all right,
and work together with the difference.
Prof, thank you so much for speaking to us. Really appreciate your time and your insights. Crime expert Professor Jacob Mofokeng just speaking to us about the crime trends, travel warnings from various countries, but also what law enforcement is doing, and just looking at who is vulnerable in the rise of kidnapping complaints, attempts, cases that we are seeing in South Africa.
Téléchargez l'application Channel Africa sur votre Play Store ou Apple Store afin de pouvoir suivre toutes nos émissions en direct de là où vous vous trouvez. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802.
And the WhatsApp hotline number is +27634069126. If you want to reach out to us and share your perspective on whatever is happening in and around your world, please do tell us where you're watching from, listening from, and let us know the stories that are driving your conversations, influencing your decisions wherever you are, including we'll be looking at our 2140 feature now. And we are looking at this story. This is the book that we are looking at. And I'm going to put it up here so you can see it. If you don't have a copy, there you can get it. We'll be speaking to Tsepiso Makwetla. His book is called Rooted and Rising, Reclaiming Our Culture and Redefining Global Influence. Tsepiso Makwetla, Dr. Tsepiso Makwetla, as you know, Africa branding specialist. We've had him on the show, I think, twice this year, just to speak about various issues. He has described the book as both a cultural manifesto and a career strategy guide. He joins us now to talk about how Africans can lead with authenticity by drawing strength from their heritage. Dr. Makwetla, a very good evening to you. Thank you for joining us this Thursday. And I know we missed the launch of this book, but here we are.
We're here, right?
We are here. So tell me about the book. What inspired it? Was it through and also just remind us again, I think you've been to every African state on the continent?
I've been to every country.
Yeah.
I've been to every country, and multiple of them multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been to every island around the continent. So I've done all the 60 countries which qualify to be African, or which are African. And what inspired the book? Well, I think the travels also inspired the book. So if you remember my book last year, my memoirs last year was called The Traveler, Crossing Borders and Connecting Africa. Now, part of the outcome of that journey was to say to myself, but what is it as Africans that we need to, what will we need as Africans to be able to compete in the world? And I've come to the conclusion that what distinguishes us is our culture as Africans. And everybody is seeking our culture. You look at Makosa, Desired, Tebe Bagugu, Desired over the world. You look at our music, Black Coffee in Ibiza. You look at Amapiano. You look at Esther Mahlangu from the visual art. So wherever you go, our continent's culture is being sought after and desired by everybody else. And I said to myself, so why are we then trying to be like everybody else rather than affirming who we are and using that as our competitive advantage?
And then what made you think, and for some people it might sound like a natural conclusion, but it would have to take you seeing something that made you think in that particular way. And I want to know what that is, because you say it is inspired by your traveling, but what is it at some point that made you say identity, culture and narrative, leadership, purpose and influence?
Well, if you look at this, if you look at how people talk about Africa generally, we always talked about in diminutive terms. We never spoken about in the same heroic way that people talk about made in France, about made in England, made in Italy, and I said to myself, well, part of my work over the last 20 years or so has been looking at African brands. So what have I learned about African brands? Only 20% of the brands that Africans admire are made in Africa. And having traveled to Cannes to go look at global creativity and everywhere else in the world, I've also realized that we Africans are the only people who are trying to fit in while everybody else tries to stand out. So it's really a collective. It's not the one thing, but it is a collective over the years. I remember when I was at Cannes, and I said to myself, wait, so the Spanish people, their work that they submit for creativity is very Spanish. The French, very French. The American, very American. Why are we trying to be like them? Why are we not trying to be different? And so it's a collective. It's a collective of that. It's a collective of looking at the desirability of our culture. It is looking at how we ourselves are looking down on our own culture. And as I've said, the study that we do, 68% of Africans say they believe in Africa, but only 20% of them buy made in Africa. So that inspired, that collectively inspired the need for me to say, let me get into this more decisively now, specifically. And whereas The Traveler was my memoirs, this is a continental book. It's not my book, it's a continent's book. It's a collective of our story. It's a collective of what makes us distinctive.
And tell us some of the people that you spoke to, because in an interconnected world, from what you're saying, I mean, we are always saying to the world, we are on par with you. So we do that within the deficit frames, as you say, that people talk to us or put us in. So standing up and owning our culture sometimes becomes very difficult, because people then are more comfortable in describing us as exotic, but that is also almost hollow, pithy in a way, right, that makes us seem like it's fashionable. They take away the depth and substance of being African.
Right. I mean, if you look back, what's Meryl Streep and Robert Redford came to Africa in 70s or 80s, and they came up with the movie Out of Africa. 1991, Esther Mahlangu was invited to Paris, and the work of the Ndebeles were paraded in Paris, and then all of a sudden we was like, oh my goodness, so maybe Esther is something else. And you look at the people like the Tylers, as I've said, the Burna Boys, and all those all over the world. To me, looking at all this collectively, I said to myself, it is time. Papa had a beautiful story where the T-shirts talk about Africa, your time is now. It's always been our time, but I wanted to define what our time should look like. And our time needed to be authentic, and our time needed to be, it needs to feel right. And it needs to be in our own terms. So this is really about us reclaiming our culture on our own terms.
And that's what I want to look at, what you're saying to young people. And again, just if you could reflect on the conversations you've had, that you reflect in the book, Tebe, on nation branding and cultural advocacy, how you say to young people and those who are living that. You've mentioned your Tebes, your Papama, but how do we, while we reflect on our past history, your Sarki of being paraded in Europe as a curiosity, but also then be a curiosity in the right way, one that has legacy, that has legs to stand on, that is proudly African.
Yeah, that is authentic, and I don't think. But and you're right when you said that we used to be paraded for profit, and we never used to be in charge of that story. And part of what I do here in the book is, and that's why I go back to the beginning, and I said, when it comes to us as Africans, the one thing that distinguishes us, the first principle, is people. Because we are the only people in the world with us. Let me give you an example. When you meet a white person or a person who's non-African, and the first thing they ask you is, what do you do? But when you meet an African, the first question they ask you is, where are you from? Who are you? As they say in Botswana, the ID even says Omang. So who are you? Because we try to connect. We try to connect how we relate to each other. And I was in Ethiopia last week, and I was speaking about this concept of Ubuntu, for example, which means I am because you are, because we see that connectedness. But in the Ethiopian context, they say I am because you were. It speaks to the totality of the African experience. Why people is the first principle of reclaiming our culture. It's about understanding that with us, we measure our success, not about what we've achieved in life, but where we come from and how we've lifted where we come from.
So I want to then look at, you have a competence and performance matrix in the book, right? But I want to also look at the Brand Africa 100 research. It shows that African markets often admire non-African brands. So in as much as we walk the talk and we are amandlaring and we're wearing our Maxhosa outfits and whatever, but the requisite faith in those brands is not always there. We're always saying, oh, the luxury brands from wherever, that's when you've reached the pinnacle of success.
Because we are the very first people who underestimate where we come from, and I think I also deal with it in the book somewhere. I talk about how in the 1600 or 1700 one British envoy said, if we strip the Africans of their culture, we strip them of their ways of life, they will become ultimately what we want them to become. So it means that the reason that we look down on anything that's us is because it's been stripped down systematically over the years. It's been taken away from us. It is for that reason, as Ngugi says, we look at Africa, we look at anything African through a foreign lens rather than through an African lens. So what I'm trying to do in here is to reclaim that part. Is for us now to begin to look at Africa as Africans and to look at that with a valuable eye, and to also be able to say, this is what's going to distinguish us when we compete in the world. And we're seeing examples of it now. And we've just mentioned some of them. We're seeing examples now. We're seeing the fact that Burna Boy is one of the most successful artists in the world, not just African. And every time he performs, he exports Africa, whether it's Black Coffee, whether it's Tyler, whether in fashion, it's Maxhosa, it's Tebe. All those people, every time, or Nelson Makamo in visual art and Esther Matlango, every time they communicate as Africans and they take our culture out, and they are the ultimate beneficiary of it, they affirm and reinforce what makes us distinguished, but also reaffirm in us the confidence that who we are and what we have is valuable.
Taba, thank you very much. Before I let you go, wait a second, I need to say this. You write like a doctor, ne?
Right.
You written a message for me. I can barely read it.
Neither can I.
Thank you for admitting that, because I all right.
I always say to the people, listen, when I sign the book, I'm just marking it yours. I'm marking the territory. I'm saying Tsepiso Makwetla from Tebe. The rest in the middle, just call it love. Right. Just say in the middle is just love.
All right. We receive it and we send it right back to you. Thank you very much, Dr. Tebe Ikalafeng, Africa's branding specialist, author of the book we've just been speaking about, reviewing Rooted and Rising, Reclaiming Our Culture and Redefining Our Global Influence, and The Traveler, that's his other book, Crossing Borders and Connecting Africa. Well, that's how we come to the end of our 2140 feature this Thursday. But of course, we're coming to the end of Africa World Hour. Shayla Ndukumana joining us in studio to talk about what to expect from African Diaries this evening. Shayla.
So we're talking all things trends, lovely lady. I see the lashes. I see you. Love it for you.
Really? Why?
We're talking trends, and listen, those lashes are trending. In the first hour, we talk all things festive foods. Did you know that cheesecake and braais are no longer a trend in the festive season in South Africa?
I never thought. Okay, you're right. There was a time with the Woolworths, particularly, part of my using the brand name, but it is important to mention that, because people would specifically say it has to be the Woolies baked cheesecake.
Yes,
like it was the Woolies tin roof ice cream.
Yes.
What's new?
That's what we're gonna find out. What's replacing? Listen, I can skip the cheesecake. I can skip the Mulva pudding. I'm curious about the braais. What do you mean they're no longer a trend? What would replace braais?
I doubt it'll ever be not a trend.
Apparently they're not.
So what we're doing, what's that pork? What? You know that one they put the pineapple on, and
what, were you like roasting pork on?
Yes, come on.
The rotisserie
gammon.
Okay. There we go. Oh, well done to our technical producer over there. So in the
now
first
we know
hour,
what she says.
Oh, come on. And in the second hour of the show, we're going to be looking at farmers markets and the rise of these markets, opportunities for entrepreneurs to sell their product range through these pop-up markets as compared to waiting for the traditional routes, which is in store. I actually
like them because that's where you really do encounter up-and-coming entrepreneurs. But also, there's a rise in organic products.
Yeah.
And it makes it more accessible than your traditional retail spaces, which also limits those entrepreneurs of those products. So I love me some farmers market.
Okay, me.
So that's just like a nice space as well, relaxation. You bump into people. Hello, how are you? You have a nibble here. You talk or read. You know.
I don't know if it's that right now. It depends on which market you go to. I feel like they've changed. The introduction of music, and then it went from music to music stages. Now you're hearing tumbaga, 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 and you're trying to buy your products, and it's a cluster of people. It's not as relaxing as it used to be.
Where is that? Where they have the goof goof?
We'll off-air this one. All
right, thanks, Sailor. That's coming up on African Diaries. From us, says good night for now. Do stay watching Channel Africa.
Conversations that touch the heart and inspire change. Here on African Diaries, only on Channel Africa.